The member for Higgins.
Mr Speaker, I wouldn't want today to pass in the House without commemorating the event which occurred in this chamber on the 27th of May 1909, 100 years ago. For it was on that day that the member for Ballarat and two-time Prime Minister Alfred Deakin stood in the House and announced to the House that he had become the Leader of the Opposition in place of Joseph Cook, the Leader of the Free Trade Party. It was the arrival of fusion between the Liberal protectionists and the Free Traders in this parliament, and indeed the birth of the Liberal Party. And I'm indebted to Senator Brandis for reminding me that this is the centenary of that great event. The fusion of the two political parties, the protectionists and the Free Traders, led to the defeat of Andrew Fisher's Labor government and the return to the Prime Ministership for the third time of Alfred Deakin. There had been many Liberal parties using that name before that time, going back to colonial periods. Henry Parkes in New South Wales had used the name Liberal. Griffith of Queensland had used the name Liberal, and in Victoria many different associations at different times had also used the name. But when the first Commonwealth Parliament was assembled, the defining economic issue which split the parliament was the tariff. And the political associations took their identity from the position which they assumed in relation to the tariff. On one side, those that believed in protection, and on the other, those that believed in free trade. Protectionists stronger in Victoria, free traders stronger from New South Wales. With the rise of the fledgling Labor Party, the parliament split three ways. Alfred Deakin was to famously remark that there were 3 11s playing the cricket match in the early Commonwealth parliaments. It was a period of considerable instability, but the fusion of 1909 established the two-party system here in Australia. The Parliamentary Handbook records Deakin's third government as protectionist free trade tariff reform, but in fact Deakin had launched a platform for the new Liberal Party on the 26th of May 1909. When the Liberal Party went into opposition in 1910 and was not to return until 1913, it was Joseph Cook who had the honour of being the Prime Minister of the first Liberal Party. The First World War and the Great Depression led to reorganisations of Australian political parties, and the name Nationalists and United Australia Party was used. But when Robert Menzies reorganised the political forces, non-Labor forces, in the early 1940s, he consciously chose the name Liberal Party, reaching back to the creation of Alfred Deakin out of fusion in 1909 as the name for the Liberal Party of Australia, which he led successfully into government in 1949. The fusion brought together protectionists and free traders, and there have always been free trade and protectionist tendencies inside the Liberal Party. It brought together supporters of arbitration and opponents of arbitration. It brought together Liberals and Conservatives. It's almost trite these days to hear the expression used that the Liberal Party is a broad church. Very few people know that the Liberal Party is in fact the fusion of two political traditions which were brought together under the leadership of Alfred Deakin on this day, announced in this parliament 100 years ago. And the Liberal Party ought to take great pride in that event, which gave birth to one of the great political traditions here in Australia, probably the most successful political tradition in Australian history. Under the leadership first of Menzies and successive leaders, the Liberal Party has been in office and made an enormous contribution to the future of our country.